Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. And it is that third month of the year. It is finally March. So, you know what that means. It's time to break down some teams to get you ready for Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament. So, Tim, are you ready to go?
Am I ready? I have
Are
been
you
waiting for
ever?
this for months,
Are you
so let's
ever?
run it.
So, with these conference breakdowns, we always start with some of the lesser known teams, the mid majors, the best of the rest outside of the Power Six, starting with the Mountain West. This could be an interesting conference to watch because this could be a six bid as much as a seven bid league if things get crazy. Dude, the Mountain West, who'd have thunk it? So, the first team we got to go through is San Diego State. Right now, they're sitting at 22 and 8, 11 and 6. They're fifth in the Mountain West Conference, but they are still one of the best teams in this conference. They're the darling underdogs from last year's national championship, and they're looking at another crack. They're projected on about the 4 or 5 seed line. Defense is still their calling card. They'll chip away and slow you down. And on offense, they're led by Jaden Leday, the Mountain West scoring leader. The Aztecs can log anybody down defensively, but here's the thing. If that armor starts to crack, they can find themselves on upset watch.
Yeah, you kind of see this with a lot of teams that happen to be, defensive minded. And if their offense isn't, super high powered as well, if you start to attack that defense and find something that works, even for just like a significant stretch of time, doesn't even have to be the whole game,
Mhm.
you can definitely find them an upset watch. We've seen that with a team like Houston in years past, where they're really good defensively, but their offense can struggle at times. But overall, this team is still very solid. You may find them at fifth in the Mountain West, but if you look statistically, Ken Palm still has them at 20th in the country. So they're still an elite defensive team. And they've definitely got a lot of those guys still that were able to carry them to that national championship last year. So they're definitely a team to watch. I would not be surprised to see them make some noise both in their conference tournament and potentially in March Madness if they can keep that defensive intensity that they had last year. That is what carried them against a lot of great teams.
Defense wins championships. Another team that could be highly dangerous in this Mountain West Conference is Utah State. The Aggies are 24 and 5 with a 12 and 4 conference record. They're sitting at the top of the Mountain West, and they've been the surprise of the conference. To start the season, they went on a 15-game winning streak, including their highest ranked win against Colorado State. They got that 1-2 punch, the guard and big duo of Darius Brown and Great Osobor. The Aggies are led by a strong offense and very efficient shooting. They lead the conference in shooting percentage.
Yeah, I mean, this team has been a massive surprise this year. No one really saw this coming, and to see them projected as a six seed right now is pretty darn crazy. They've done a fantastic job of essentially just finding ways to score. Obviously, they are an elite offensive team, and what you will find though is they are pretty decently balanced, and I think that's why they've had the success that they have. You see a lot of teams that are good on offense, but they're good at offense at the expense of their defense. Utah State is actually strangely balanced. In terms of offensive and defensive efficiency, they're at 50th and 43rd and currently in Ken Palm. I'll be talking about Ken Palm statistics all the time. It's some of my favorite stuff to look at.
What does
Um,
Ken Palm say, Tim? You'll tell him.
Hey, I mean, they will tell you that they are a very balanced team, and I think that's been a
Mhm.
lot of their success, or a lot of reason for their success this year. But I really think that that guard duo is going to be the key to their success potentially here in the tournament, because we've always talked about year in and year out, and we'll be broken records throughout the month of March and April talking about guard play in the tournament. But that can really set you apart from other teams. So those guards have a big chance of stepping up for the Aggies here and really carrying Utah State.
If you want to look at a team whose stock is rising as of late, look no further than the Boise State Broncos because they are one of the hottest teams in the country at 21 and 9 and 12 and 5, tied for second in the Mountain West. They're currently on a 5-game win streak, and their formula has been turning up the offense a few notches, and they're frequently reaching like 85, 90 points a game, led by guys like Tyson Degenhart and Max Rice. If this offense can stay in rhythm, they could be a potentially dangerous tournament team.
100%. I think for Boise State, the key is going to be, can they keep that offense even just near the level that they're currently at? This 5 game winning streak has largely been because of how that offense has been able to turn up. But they're already a pretty solid defensive team. And they're already they're going to have that defensive intensity against most teams that they face. So if they're able to keep up the offensive side of the ball, you could find them being a real problem for a lot of teams in the tournament, depending on how their offense chooses to try to attack them. So they're definitely a team to watch out for, and I would not be surprised if they make a push here in the Mountain West tournament as well.
The next team we're going to cover is Nevada. And they've gone through some peaks and valleys this season. They started the season 15-1, and they've most recently rather, finished the season with 9 out of their last 10 games won. They've shot back up into the tournament picture, shooting up the brackets, led by the duo of Jared Lucas and Keenan Blackshear. The strategy for them is get to the free throw line. Jared Lucas is one of the country's most efficient free throw shooters, so at least as of late, that's what they've been using to win games. And especially to help them close out the close games, because they have guys that are dangerous and can hit their free throws at the end, which this is another thing we're going to be a broken record on. Free throws are so, so important when it comes to March Madness and advancing here in the tournament.
Absolutely. That's going to be another thing that you'll hear plenty from us over the course of these next 2 months. But yeah, Nevada has been, a very solid team, and they're another team that's, you know, hitting their stride at the right time. They struggled a little bit more middle of the season, and they started the season off, like you mentioned, very, very solidly. So those free throws are going to be key, especially when you have a team that shoots the ball that well from the free throw line. Your job is to attack, attack, attack. Put the pressure on the defense, force them to try to defend you without fouling, because getting to the free throw line is almost as good as just making the bucket. And if you can get a couple and ones in there, that's all the better. So they're led by a couple of guys that you've heard these names before if you follow these teams in the last couple of years. A guy like Jared Lucas and Keenan Blackshear both. They've got experience. They've got a lot of what you want out of a team that can really make a difference come tournament time. So they're definitely another team that I'll be interesting to see just how they choose to essentially go after some of these teams.
After that, we have Colorado State, and they're one of the more interesting teams in this conference because maybe they're simply just a team that hates playing outside the mountains. They're sitting at 21-9, but they're 9-8 in the Mountain West, and they're 7th in the conference. Theoretically, they should be a lock for the tournament, but a bad stretch of basketball and a poor conference record keep them in question. Right now, they're on that last 4 bye wavelength, and their home and road record that's going to tell the whole story, especially going into March, where you don't have any more games at home now. At home, Colorado State is 15-2. On the road, they're 3-7. So that's a real problem going forward.
Yeah, and I think some of on that conversation is, how does that translate to neutral court, and what region do they end up in? I mean, there's always something to be said about the way your fans travel, and for a smaller school like a Colorado State, you're not like a big team that's going to travel like a Duke, UNC, even like Purdue. Purdue is a team that travels super, super well. So what is that going to look like for them on a neutral court? They've got all the guys that can really make a difference. You saw them be elite in non-conference. I mean, their complete and utter domination of Creighton was really astonishing. I think where you first heard of Colorado State there, and guys like Isaiah Stevens are super fun to watch, super electric. He's just a really solid guy to be leading at the helm. But the key for them is going to be playing their best basketball at the right time, because clearly being on the road has not been good for them, and obviously not in a super strong conference. They're going to face teams a lot better than the teams that they faced on the road in their conference. So I think they have a chance. They absolutely have a chance with the way that they can play, to really take it to teams. But at the same time, if they're off on any given night, it could go bad very quickly.
I completely agree. That's something we're definitely going to have to watch out for. We're going to flip the script and talk about New Mexico at 21-8 and 9-7 in the Mountain West. They sit in 6th place. They play just like their name suggests. They're fast, they're crazy, and they're a ton of fun. They hold the conference's top offense and the country's fifth fastest offense. So they'll run the floor and absolutely put points on your head. And it comes in multiple options. Donovan Dent, Jalen House, and Jamal Mashburn are all scoring over 15 points a game. And they operate an offense that's unselfish and they don't care who's scoring as long as the ball goes in the basket. The only problem for New Mexico is sometimes their defense will fall behind. They play so fast that the other team will score just as many points, but they've proven that they can hang with anybody in the Mountain West.
Yeah, and with a team like this, with the way that they play defense, yeah, some of their defense can, let up some more buckets because of just how fast that they're going. But in terms of the actual, statistical aspect of them, they are a team that can turn defense into offense very quickly. That's why they move so fast. They're an incredibly fast team, and I think that their defense can surprise some people when they're on. Um, but they're a team that, like you said, having those three scorers is going to be huge. Whenever you can find different ways to turn, very few teams are going to have the defensive scheme or even the individual personnel to defend that many guys on the defensive end. So they're going to be a team that if they can get those guys all playing solid basketball at the right time, where they have those three different options they can go to, that can be really an interesting way to stretch teams out and really do some damage.
We got one more team in the Mountain West, the seventh and final team, UNLV, the Runnin' Rebs. They're somehow here, and you're probably thinking, how is that even possible? They have a 19-10 record, but they're 12-5 in conference and tied for second. So if there's any team that could throw this conference into disarray, it's these guys. The Runnin' Rebs have rattled off 10 of their last 11, and in the process have beaten most of the major powers of the conference. They might not seem all that remarkable, but all it takes is a team to get hot at the right time. You got a guy like Dayton Thomas, he is a star in the making. Luis Rodriguez, he can do whatever you need him to do. And I don't know, I just got a funny feeling about this UNLV team.
There's certainly a team that you have to watch. And again, I mean, we see this all the time with teams that just start rattling off wins and essentially playing above their mark at the right time. And going into the conference tournament, they're playing fantastic. So when it comes down to it, I would not be surprised if you saw at least like an upset or two in this conference tournament. And if things fall the right way, where they are just on fire at the right time, this could absolutely be a team that steals the conference.
With that being said, Tim, who do you have winning the Mountain West?
Oh, I mean, usually the Mountain West doesn't have this many
Dude,
options, and I
it's
think that's
so
the thing.
difficult. There are
That,
so many options to pick from. There is no
yeah,
one wrong choice. Like and I'll let you get to it, but at least for me, I was looking through these teams. I'm like, I don't know who's going to win this conference.
yeah, it's one of those things that it's so hard to pick because especially you have so many different teams. There's not one that really stands out to me in terms of like this is a winning formula. They've got a couple different teams, but if I actually have to go with a team, they may have struggled within conference, but it's probably a relatively popular pick to trust in the experience and defense of San Diego State. I know they've struggled within conference, but they've got all of the pieces to when they really want to turn it on, exactly what they did during the NCAA tournament last year. They turned on the defensive intensity. They just knew exactly what they were trying to do. Everyone was on the same page, and most teams were, incapable of doing anything about it. So I really do believe that San Diego State will be able to figure some stuff out within conference and lock in come tournament time and come away with this conference tournament.
And that's the thing. You have to trust the experience of San Diego State. But I look at that conference record and I go, they're susceptible to being beat on any given night. And this
Oh
team
yeah,
that I have has beaten San Diego State by almost 20 points in the regular season. And that's New Mexico. This conference is absolutely wide open. So why in the world would I pick chalk? I'm just gonna pick the fastest and the most fun squad because imagine if they catch fire, not only are they going to win the tournament and potentially go on a run, they're going to capture the hearts of America while they're doing it because this team is such an entertaining team to watch. So I have full faith in them that they can do it.
Drew loves picking the fun underdog.
Dude, I'm a fun underdog type guy. It happens every single year. You ought to know this by now.
They do this every year.
Well, So when it works out for me, it sure as heck works out. But we got more conferences to run through. Next up, we'll have the Missouri Valley Arch Madness. We got a few teams at the top, the two Titans, and then some spoilers who could potentially steal the show. Starting with the Indiana State Sycamores. They're sitting at 26-5, 17-3 atop the Missouri Valley. This is the best team that Indiana State basketball has seen since Larry Bird. The Sycamores
That's crazy to say.
are atop the conference in several offensive categories, including field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw percentage, and they're first nationally in effective field goal percentage. Leading that offense might also be Indiana State's best player since Larry Bird, the man, the myth, the legend, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry
I
Nerd,
love I love that name.
Robbie Avila. See, this
This guy's
team,
just fun to watch.
he not only is he fun to watch, the Sycamores are fun to watch. They're incredibly top heavy, and they pack enough punch to deliver a knockout in this one.
I mean, they do. Obviously, you talk about all those offensive categories. They have a really good offense, and not just for their conference, just overall. They've had their slip ups as every other team in the country. But in terms of their scoring ability, if they're on any given night, if Robbie Avila is knocking down shots and as well as being a playmaker as well, Indiana State could absolutely take on, I would consider, almost everybody, just because of the fact that it's that shock factor. That's what happens with these mid-major teams is you get caught off guard, and even though teams, even though and you've looked at this team, you've scouted this team will still be able to find ways to hit you in ways that you just didn't see coming. So this team is going to be a really fun team to watch, and honestly been really fun to see throughout the year. So I really hope for their case and for the country's case, I'd love to see them make a deep run.
Yeah, I think you could also throw Drake in that category. They're at 25-6, 16-4, right behind Indiana State. They were once right in the picture for an at-large bid, but then they lost to Northern Iowa, and now they're firmly outside. But that doesn't mean Drake is out of it. They still have a very real chance to make the tournament. They just need to win the conference. They're just much more dependent on that. They're led by Tucker DeVries. They've been to the tournament before. They know how to win the Missouri Valley. They're gritty, and they want to earn their spot back.
Yeah, I mean, something interesting to look at this team is, and a question I almost have for you is, with their position kind of firmly in the next four out range right now, if they make a big conference tournament run, but per se or say lose in the conference tournament championship, do you think that would be enough to get them in, or do they need this this championship?
They're going to need a lot of help from the teams that are around them in the bubble if
They
they
would need a
don't
lot of
win
bubble
it.
teams to lose early in the
Yes.
tournament or in their
Yes.
conference tournament. So
It's
if
a
they're
long
not going
shot.
to,
It's not impossible. I would just say it's improbable.
yeah,
Just like seeing how the bracketology is shaping up.
yeah,
I feel like there are more Power Six teams than usual. Because if you think like the Big East has like 8 teams potentially, the SEC has like 8 teams potentially. I think this is a down year by the Big Ten standards because they're only looking at what, like 5 or 6 teams right now,
something like that.
whatever the numbers may be. But these at-large spots are going to be hard to come by. So if I'm Drake, I'd just leave all doubt and win the tournament.
Yeah, realistically, they kind of just got to go win it, and I think they have the offense to do it, especially with a guy led by Tucker DeVries. I mean, this is a team that we saw last year. Obviously, they didn't end up with the tournament NCAA tournament success that they had hoped, but they're still a team that we know can do damage. So they certainly have the ability to win this conference championship. They've just got to get things back on track and go do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't blame Drake too much when you run into an absolute brick house like Miami, but that's neither here nor there. We throw up the U here at running the table, as you can see over that way. We got more teams to go through in the Missouri Valley. Next being Bradley. They're not really that remarkable. They're 21-10. They're 13-7, which is third in the Missouri Valley. But look, we can't just make this like a two team conference. We
A
gotta
two horse
throw
race.
Yeah, we gotta throw somebody in there that could potentially mess this thing up. And Bradley's streaky. They have
Yeah,
multiple 5+ game winning streaks, but they also have a 5+ game losing streak under their belt. All that just means they need to catch fire. I mean, if
yeah.
Duke Dean can rally the boys and get them ready to go, why not? Why not Bradley? Why not the Braves?
Hey, I mean, they're
Per-
certainly not a team that you're used to talking about when it comes to college basketball, but
First ever
that's
Bradley
what's
mention on the channel. I'm pretty
I was
sure
gonna say. This is definitely
it's a
first ever
first for us.
Bradley mentioned. But like you said, when you have a team this streaky, it doesn't really matter what you see from them statistically, because if they're on, they're an entirely different team. But when they're off, it's the opposite direction. So if they're on, then you could absolutely see them making a run here in this conference tournament. But the big thing is they just have to catch fire at the right time.
Got one more team to talk about in the Missouri Valley, and that's Illinois State. Why in the world are we talking about Illinois State? They're 15 and 16. They're 9 and 11.
They're not even above 500.
They're tied for seventh in the Missouri Valley. Why are we talking about them? Because I feel like it. That's why.
This is the
And
Butler of last year.
dude, no, this is the Butler of the Missouri Valley. I feel like talking about Illinois State every year, so I want to talk about Illinois State. They're one of my favorite college basketball teams. See, there haven't been many positives, but they do have a ranked win at Terre Haute, and they have a guy that could potentially carry them going forward in Johnny Kinzinger. He's emerged late in the season, and he gives that hope on what is going to be a very, very young team. They're going to be active in the transfer portal. I mean, when you have 11 out of 15 guys on a roster being graduating seniors, that does not bode well, but it also gives Illinois State a chance to legitimately like rebuild.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, it also means that they have experience. They have a lot of older guys that, I doubt that they're going to get spooked by, the concept of tournament time. So you never know. They haven't had much success this year, but I mean, to go and travel to Indiana State and get that very solid win in Indiana State's first week being ranked, it proves that they can do it. It just matters if they can do it at the right time. The odds are probably not,
Yeah,
but we talk about them anyway.
I mean, crazier things have happened. If Georgetown can win the Big East, Illinois State can win the Missouri Valley. All
That
right.
was wild.
Yes, it was. But we're going to predict the conference winner. Tim, who do you have taking home Arch Madness?
I gotta be honest, this one's pretty simple to me. Like, I love Indiana State too much to go against them here. I know it's fun to pick the upset teams, but this
Yeah.
team is just so solid and so good across the board, especially on the offensive end. I don't see them slipping up in this tournament. It's possible, but they look so well put together on the offensive end.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that any team is going to be able to outscore them in this one.
Tim, I could pick Illinois State, but I want it to actually seem like I'm trying here. So I'm going to be a little
We
bit more
can't we
serious than
can't just
that.
have me picking all of the
Logical picks and
all of the
chalk picks.
favorites and then you picking all of the upsets.
I mean, I like being the upset guy. You know this. But I also have Indiana State. I mean, they're good enough to get into the tournament without the auto bid, but this is still the conference's best team overall. And they're the best at putting the ball in the basket. Like, that's the most important
That
thing
is the
here.
name of the game.
And I'll take the team that does that better than
Basket
any other
ball.
teams. Wow. Groundbreaking analysis.
I really am a basketball guru. I
Dude,
know.
I'm on fire today. We got one more conference, though, and that is the West Coast Conference. We got two teams that are at the top and one team that could potentially shake stuff up, like the Missouri Valley, starting with St. Mary's. And playing St. Mary's is like death by a thousand paper cuts. It has been for the last few years. It's slow, painful, and downright boring at times, but they'll get the job done. They'll lock you up on defense and slow you down on offense, and they'll have fun doing it. After overcoming a slow start, St. Mary went on a 16-game winning streak that only came to an end just recently in the regular season finale versus Gonzaga. So, what do we have on the Gales?
I mean, you're completely right when it comes to their style of play. They're very much a slow it down team. We've known this for the last couple of years. They're a team that wants to really slow you down, lock you down on defense, and just throw you off your rhythm. They want to control the pace of the game, which is why
Mhm.
they play so slow. This is not a team that if they run up against a quick team that they'll, run to their pace. They will slow it down as much as possible. They will force you to play their game, which is why I mean they have a good amount of success with that. So they've obviously done really well within the West Coast Conference this year. They kind of capitalized on some of Gonzaga's mishaps towards the beginning in terms of trying to figure out who they are. But they still, I mean, they've lost 7 games total, but they're a team that, like we've seen in previous years, their defense is what's going to be the key here. If they can keep this to be a low scoring game, whoever they face, they have a chance to win every single game. If they can keep it under, 60, 65 points, that's their bread and butter. So we'll see what their defense looks like, but they're a team that absolutely has performed well in this West Coast Conference this year.
You mentioned Gonzaga. That's the next team up here. They're sitting at 24-6, 14-2, which is second in the West Coast Conference. They've jumped back up into the top 25 and right back into the tournament picture. They're on an 8-game winning streak, and they've looked really, really good while they're doing it. They're actually starting to look like Gonzaga. They have a pair of ranked road wins at Kentucky, at St. Mary's.
Kentucky
So
was a really impressive one.
yes, it was. They're led by transfers, so you got to imagine they need some time to gel and play together, such as Graham Ike from Wyoming, Ryan Nemhard from Creighton. But those two guys are now picking up the slack. They're producing like we know they can. And now Gonzaga is back.
Yeah, we're finally starting to see the Gonzaga that we are used to seeing, in terms of their offensive prowess. Just again playing the cohesive style of play. So they did struggle to start the season, and seeing them finally drop out of the top 25 was a weird sight. But like you said, they're back in. They're playing good basketball. Um, we're seeing those guys like Ryan Nemhard and Graham Ike specifically. We're starting to see out of them what made them such promising prospects in the transfer portal to begin with. They just needed some time to learn the system, figure out how they wanted to play with this personnel. But I feel like they figured this out by now. So they are definitely a team, despite not having quite the dominant success that we've seen them in the past across the entire year. They're still a team that you absolutely have to pay attention to, and you absolutely have to respect coming in, even though they've had a bit of a down year by their standards, because their standards are so high.
Next up, we have San Francisco, a team that could potentially shake things up in the WCC, them or Santa Clara. But to me, they're the third clear best team. The Dons are. They've got a lot of work to do if they're going to topple the big dogs of the conference. They've been tested entering the conference tournament, having lost 3 of their last 4, all to the conference's other top teams, on the road against St. Mary's, at home against Gonzaga, and on the road at Santa Clara. So I mean, this team could be interesting. They could. Might happen. Probably
Yeah,
not.
I mean the biggest thing for them is trying to figure out the offensive side of the ball. That's what's really, I think, tailed off a bit. They're a solid defensive team, but their offense struggles, especially against some of these top teams in the conference. I would say personally, I think if they run into a team like St. Mary's, I don't know if they'll get past them. They have a
Probably
chance. They have a
not.
chance in any game, but in terms of just the style of play, when you get two defensive teams kind of going at each other, it's kind of like whose offense will be able to figure out enough. And given San Francisco's history against some of the other teams in the conference and how they've struggled more recently, I don't know. I can't exactly see it, but they definitely have a chance. They're still a very solid team overall. But I don't know. The situation doesn't bode very well for them, I would say.
I miss the days when the West Coast Conference was a 3-bid league. Anyway, let's predict a conference tournament winner. Tim, who do you have taking home the WCC?
I think this one kind of comes down to playing well at the right time. St. Mary's has had a really great throughout this entire year. Gonzaga has really come on as of late. Um, the thing with the West Coast Conference is always comes down to offense versus defense, because Gonzaga is always the offensive heavy team and St. Mary's is always the defensive heavy team. And it's kind of like
What do you want to flip a coin?
which aspect do you think is going to win this year? I don't know. For this one, I actually think I will trust the consistency of how St. Mary's has played throughout this entire year, at least in the conference. They've had great success throughout the conference. I know they did just lose to Gonzaga recently. But when it comes to tournament time, defense is crucial. You always talk about defense wins championships.
That is probably the matchup, St. Mary's and Gonzaga. It's 2 top-heavy teams. I'm on the other side of that, though. I got Gonzaga. This team had a lot of new faces at the beginning of the year, but now they're gelling and figuring out how to win together, which is so crucial. And I think they're going to continue riding the wave to a conference championship. So, with that being said, we got a few more teams to cover. We're going to rapid fire through some other mid-major teams to look out for, starting with James Madison. At 28-3, 15-3, and second in the Sun Belt, they have a top 10 scoring offense in the country, and the Dukes have dispatched everyone in their way except for Appalachian State. If they can overcome that hurdle, JMU may be ready for the bright lights of the NCAA tournament. The Grand Canyon Lopes are in first place at the WAC at 26-4, 16-3 in conference, led by Bryce Drew as head coach. They have the Lopes sprinting towards the NCAA tournament with their two best players in Ty and Grant Foster and Gabe McLaughlin, elevating the entire team to their level. They're bordering on at-large territory, and Grand Canyon could definitely surprise some people. The McNeese Cowboys are 16-1 and first in the Southland, 27-3 overall. They've absolutely steamrolled that conference. This team is highly athletic, and they've been on a tear, 23 wins in their last 24 games. They might just be good enough to cause an upset. Colgate Raiders, baby. We're doing this again with Colgate. Absolutely. At 22-9 and 16-2 in the Patriot League. You can't ignore the Raiders' experience in March. This would be their fifth bid in 6 years. And besides, this offense is still just as good. Tim, you know I'm gonna pick them first round. It's gonna happen. And last but certainly not least, just might happen again where St. Peter's could sneak into this thing and cause some trouble. They're 16-11, they're 12-6 in the MAAC. The last time we saw St. Peter's, they were fast and fun offensively, but this version is imposing on defense and will slow you down to a halt on offense. We see those teams have a lot of success. St. Peter's is a team that can force misses and turnovers on the defensive end and turn that into points. So that combination in the right setting could cause all kinds of chaotic fun.
What a time.
What a time to be alive.
Please
This is
no.
March. This is March, baby. Is there any other teams that you think we should look out for as far as mid
No,
majors
I
go?
mean, in terms of those mid majors, like some of those ones that you mentioned right there, we saw JMU in their hot start to the season coming out against Michigan State. Watching teams like Grand Canyon and McNeese throughout the year, they've really surprised teams, really surprised people and come out of nowhere. So there are some of these teams that if they make the tournament, I would actually be hard pressed to not pick some of these upsets because I really like some of the composition of some of these teams, especially those two that I just mentioned with Grand Canyon and McNeese. So they're fun teams to watch, and you know just what happens when some of these really electric mid majors end up in the tournament. So it's gonna be super fun to watch. Obviously we'll be talking about a ton more conferences before we get to Selection Sunday, but I am super excited to see how this bracket turns out and see which ones are able to make it through.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can give you everything that you need over these major teams and these mid major teams to get you ready to eventually burn your brackets because that's what you do. They never work out. But that's all we got for this best of the rest. Like Tim said, we got the Power Six conferences coming up. We're gonna be continuing with Butler and Purdue game recaps throughout the rest of the season. And Tim, you got some more Boombuster Believables coming?
I do, believe it or not. I swear they're
Oh,
coming.
oh yeah. This is March. If you want us to talk about anything else, let us know. But until next time, we out.